This is the hard truth. An explanation of the deep state. Well, some of you may have heard the term, the deep state. You've probably heard the term, the New World Order. Now, I'd like to go into a bit of history here to explain the reality of the current world situation. For example, when we look at the European Union, the first person that proposed the European Union was in the 1940s, late 30s, 1940s, was Adolf Hitler. That Europe would be the controlling force and that the monies would be controlled, initiated, managed from Germany. And lo and behold, that's what we have currently. Now, the deep state, it goes back into really a mentality as opposed to certain individuals. And there was a mentality of greed, really. Now, very greedy people, people whose God is money, they're not humanitarians. The higher up that ladder you go, the less humane you become. When money's your God, you'll do anything to get it. So imagine a group of people, all with this same mentality, that don't care about the average person. We're just cattle, slaves, workers. But they need to keep thinking of ways to line their pockets and make more money. Because that's the way they are. They have no empathy. They're orientated towards money. Now, you go back in history, you go back to the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, these sorts of people, I would suggest research them, read about them. The Rothschilds have financed practically every war in the last 400 or 500 years. In some instances, both sides. Created wars by control of the financial system. The person that controls the financial system controls the world. It's as simple as that. If you've got access to all the funds and where you can send the funds, you can basically go into a country, asset strip that country, put your own person in, a puppet dictator or a loyal person to the cause. And you've got that country controlled, a mechanism that's working, generating money, and all the assets stripped out of that country. Now, this has been going on for hundreds of years. Going right back to the British Empire days, assets have been stripped from India, from Africa, before that even, going back to the Portuguese and the Spanish days, where assets were stripped out of the Americas and all the gold was taken. And basically you have a situation where the gold is what's prized. Now, every currency in the world should be backed by assets or gold. If you print paper money, then that states that it's supported by gold. Now, many moons ago, this was true, briefly. But it hasn't been true for a long time. The money people out there learnt that if you have the ability to print money yourself, you can orchestrate recessions, depressions, market crashes, everything. And to put this simply, if you go back to before there was currency, people traded, people swapped. For thousands of years it was like that. But the gold was always prized. The gold was always taken by the pharaohs, by the controlling structure of that given country. Gold was being taken out of Africa in Egyptian times, 5,000, 6,000 years ago. There's evidence of gold mining going back 200,000 years. It's always been prized. So imagine I'm lending somebody money and I'm really saying to that person, I'm going to give you this paper, and the paper's not worth anything, but I've got some gold in my garage that will support that paper, that will actually make it worth something. So you take that paper. Instead of taking the gold, you take the paper. The paper is the bearer's note, really. I promise to pay. Now, that's fine if you have the gold, if you have the assets to support the currency. And of course, in the old days, when they figured out, well, hang on a minute, instead of trading, why don't we make it simpler and use a coinage system, a currency system? We can attach a value to everything, and in the early days there was gold coins, silver coins, bronze, copper. So the coin itself was the asset, and of course that went away. That went to paper, but that got everybody into using it. And then of course everybody cherished the gold and the silver, and that went away. So then it was, well, look, we'll hold all the currency, we'll hold all the assets, the gold in Fort Knox and places like this around the world. Don't worry, we'll look after the real value that's behind the paper we're giving you. And, should we have trusted them? No. But that's how the system was orchestrated. And of course, it seems long ago that gold in Fort Knox has vanished and disappeared. There's even a chain of thought that says it doesn't exist anymore. But nevertheless, without the equitable support of the right amount of assets, money was continually printed, and the banks printed the money. So, what a fantastic scam. Somebody wants to loan some money to buy something. You print some money, bits of worthless bits of paper. You give them the paper. They take the paper and they buy that. Or they borrow some more money. And you're lending them money based on money that you haven't got, because you're the one printing it. So you haven't got any tangible money there. The banks haven't got the tangible money or the tangible funds or likely the asset support. But nevertheless, they're loaning you money that they don't have. And then they're charging you interest on money that they don't have. And all the time they do this, they're creating more money for themselves out of nothing, out of thin air, really. But the beauty of this is that if you engineer the system so that you control the loan amounts and the mortgage amounts and everything, and you suddenly start rising the prices and rising the percentage paybacks, and people lose their tangible properties. So from a situation where somebody's given somebody a worthless piece of paper, they now possess somebody's house or car because they've used that person, the labours of that person, to get that asset and then take it off them. And this is essentially what's called the fiat system, currency system. And it's squeezed people again and again and again, ridiculously, over the years, and it's got to a ridiculous state now, to the extent where, look at the credit card system. Somebody gives you a piece of plastic. You walk into a shop, you see something for 150 euros. You've only got 100 euros, but you might have an overdraft facility or whatever. You've only actually got 100 euros in your account, but you can buy that 150 euro item, but then you owe 50 euros. And with the interest, it's not 50, it's 70. So they're making money on giving you money that they don't have for you to buy things that you can't afford. And this is the credit society. So the credit card system. So nobody actually has the assets apart from the people at the very, very top. And the mechanism creates tangible assets to come back to them that they can then convert into gold. So the whole system is a con, a huge con. Because if you go back to an earlier time, you had 100 euros in your pocket, 100 pounds or $100 in your pocket, and you went out shopping, you could not spend more than you had. In the early days before, and don't forget, you're going back into the 1920s, and people didn't have, particularly from the 1800s to the 1900s, people didn't have much confidence in banks. People used to hide their money at home, things like that, under the floorboards and everything. And the banks were saying, well, we'll look after that for you. Give it to us. So all your money that you have, somebody else is holding for you. And every now and again, what happens? Bank crashes. You've lost everything. Everything's gone. Not the people at the top, of course, who've engineered the crash. So the very, very rich have controlled the finances of the world, and in so doing, controlled the people. Educated them into a consumer-based society where they must have the latest trainers, they must have the latest this, the latest phone, the latest. Most of this stuff they don't even need. Nevertheless, they've been educated because the more they have to buy, the more they'll have to work. The more they have to work, the more taxation will be put upon these people. Don't forget, taxation is illegal. Taxation is illegal. It goes back to the early feudal system days where a group of soldiers rode into a village and said, if you don't give us 6 bags of grain every week, we're going to burn your village down. And that was the granary tax, one of the very first taxes that we did. And from that granary tax system, we have modern day taxation. Taxation was extortion. Taxation is illegal. If I work for something and I've earned the money to buy that item, why should somebody take part of my money before I'm paid what I've worked for to give somewhere else? And we all know that the amount of taxation we've paid, which is supposedly go towards infrastructure and roads and things like this, well, it doesn't happen. You've only got to do the maths. You've only got to look at the billions being taken. And what's actually changing? Very little. And the changes that happen are as a result of our working. Nobody else. So the changes, we're earning the money to make a change and then saying to somebody else, we trust you to make the change for us. The same as we trust you to look after our money. Well, here's the thing, you can't trust them. You can't trust them. And the very rich, the very powerful, the very greedy, those with zero empathy, have had their secret societies for many, many years, and secret handshakes, and they have no regard for the normal person. No interest whatsoever. In the same fashion as in the corporate world, the very top guy doesn't know the names of the guys in the warehouse, right? He hasn't got a clue. what they're doing, and nor does he care. And this is the situation you've got. So you've had a group of very clever, evil people manipulating the system for their own end, making money off the backs of the people, orchestrating anything that resembles progress or change to suit themselves. And that's the truth of the matter. Holding back advancements, drip feeding us technology. The technology that they actually have is at least 50 years in front of what you see. 50 years, maybe more in the military-industrial complex. So we are the slaves in a very cleverly orchestrated system. And a cleverly orchestrated prison, actually, because you have to be in the system, you have to be working to buy things. And if you buy things, you're taxed. You pay tax at source. When you've earned your money, you pay tax on the item you buy. You pay VAT, IVA. So why are you paying another tax? So there's two taxes. And then, of course, something's imported from another country, and there's an import tax. There's a third tax. So there's three taxes. So every single way they sting you. To the degree where, in real terms, people that go to work don't even start earning money till about Thursday. They're working half the week for nothing. And this is the reality. The rich people orchestrated the system to line their own pockets and subjugate us. Now, the more controlled we are, the less hungry mouths they have to feed, the less sick people they have to look after, the less old people they have to look after, the better. Because when you have a workforce, why would you pay for 100 people to run a company when you could do it with 10? What if you could get rid of the 90, the weakest, the oldest, the slowest, the most stupid, whatever? What if you get rid of them and you just kept the 10 healthy ones? And now let's expand this. And let's look at created wars to cull the population. Viruses. In the last 50 years, viruses have flown. They've all come out from nowhere. 50 years ago, AIDS didn't exist. Ebola didn't exist. COVID didn't exist. All of these viruses, most of which are started, again, in the military-industrial complex, have been created with the sole intention, I believe, of being able to cull the workforce. Too many cattle, take them out. Take a few out. The Georgia Guidestones that, thank God, have been blown up now, that stated a lot of deep state ideology. Let's keep the world's population below 5 billion. Why? There's more than enough on this world to feed and look after everybody. More than enough. But when you've got 90% of the world's worth, 90% of the world's riches owned by 1%, 2% of the world's population, something's badly wrong. And we hear stories of, this guy is a philanthropist. No, he's not. He's avoiding tax. It's avoiding tax. These people have no regard for us whatsoever. These evil rich people that have had control of the reins for many hundreds of years, maybe thousands, have no regard for us. You have Anthony Fauci working with the Wuhan lab for gain of function, manipulation of viruses. And that's only to be used as a weapon. It's not done for any other reason. That's where you take naturally occurring virus and you mix it with other things. You're creating a weapon. And then you have Bill Gates buying up lots of farmland. So, no crops. Buying all the farmers out. To basically dry up the food supply. So you try, if you have no wars, no world wars, how are you going to get rid of the people? Well, you can hit them with a virus. The ones that are left. Triple the price of food, triple the price of any transport. Who suffers? The very poor. Suicide rates go up, crime will go up, and so on. So that will take another chunk of people out. Other little viruses they let out. Everything targets the immune system. You've got a slightly weak immune system, your history. Because they don't want that. They want strong workers. Now, if their plan was allowed to continue, they would wind up with a workforce, very strong, very intelligent. And that will become a threat. That will become a danger to them. So what would be the next stage? Transhumanism. AI implants, controlling that person. Technologically controlling that person, turning that person into essentially a robot, a working robot. Why do you think they want to do the transhumanism? Why do you think they want to do the transgender? Get rid of male and females, and they're not interested in that. They just want a slave, a unisex slave that does what they're told and makes them lots more money. This is where it's heading. This is where these people are trying to head us. And look at the Aryan philosophy. Look at Hitler's philosophy. They didn't want any deficients. They didn't want any cripples or gypsies or old people or infirm or sick or anything wrong. They didn't want them. And look where it's going now. With the European Union, originally proposed by Hitler, with the money held in the Bundesbank in Germany, proposed by Hitler. What's the NATO force? It's the army of the New World Order. That's what it is. What do we have? We have modern day socialism, where we should be thankful for the crumbs we get and work very hard and do as we're told and own nothing. Go back to the days when there was a very few super rich with castles everywhere and the rest of us were running around like peasants living in huts. That's what they want. That was the glory days for them, where they could have 1,000 acres of land and deer and venison and boar, and they could kill it and eat it to their heart's content. But if a poor person ventured onto that land and shot a deer, he was killed. Because you're not allowed to take their food. They want us to eat bugs. They want us to eat things with E numbers and artificial crap in plastic bowls. They don't eat out of Tupperware, do they? They're sitting at big mahogany tables with silver chalices and drinking out of silver goblets and no. The Tupperware and the plastic and all the rubbish and the microwaves, that's for us. That's for us. Yeah, they want to get you onto tofu and all this absolute rubbish. Of course they want you onto artificial protein and artificial this and artificial that. You're not allowed to have the real thing. They'll make that so expensive you can't buy it. But the rich people, they'll be all right. They'll still be able to get it. And this is where it's heading, and this is what it is. And this is what they are. And that's the deep state. A modern day incarnation of a Nazi regime. And they're in control at the moment. They're running the show. They're the ones that need to be taken down. They're the ones that control the news and the media. They tell us what they want to tell us. They'll tell you somebody's bad and you all believe it. Everybody believes it. And they lie. It's propaganda. BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation. It should be called the BS Broadcasting Corporation, actually, because it's absolute rubbish. When you listen to a news report, a government spokesman said today from Number 10, well, we don't want to know that. We want to know the truth. How is that news if you're just saying, well, give us a statement and we'll read your statement? That's not news. What if it's wrong? What if it's a lie? Where's the independent journalism? It's gone. It doesn't exist. So that's what the deep state is. It's an evil empire. Think of it like Star Wars. It's an evil empire controlling us, don't care about us, lie through their teeth to us, take out money, kill us, feed us. They'd feed us bugs if they could. And I'm sure that's heading that way. And this has been how they've orchestrated things for thousands of years. Certainly hundreds of years, but in a refined way. But for thousands of years. In the same fashion as in the Roman times when the people were rebelling, they put gladiatorial games on for them. What have we got today? We've got football. People are coming home from work and they've got all these things that they're interested in. I can go and have a few beers or have a cigarette and go and watch the match. And of course, all the time they're doing that, they're not seeing the money being stolen out their pocket by the system that they find themselves in. And the deep state system starts at the very beginning. When you first go to school, you are told what they want to tell you. All psychic abilities that are in children, that are inherent in children, are knocked out of them. Imaginary friends, no, there's no such thing. And it's all knocked out of them. And they are told, they're given rules at school. And you have to go to school because that's the first leg of the indoctrination program of the deep state. So it starts at the very beginning, cleverly orchestrated, and that's the current evil that controls this world.